This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi, my name is Anna Teider and this is Thank You Mama. Joining me today from Brooklyn, here is Karen DiConcetto. Karen, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you as my guest. Karen,
Yes.
I was writing my introduction for you and I thought how I love it, how multifaceted you are. It reminds me of my mom, who had so many different professions and was so fantastic in all of them. Karen, you are now a writer and a producer.
Yes.
And you worked on shows like Recovery Road and Scam Austin. Did I pronounce that correctly now?
Scam.
Scam, okay. And you're currently writing your own new TV show.
Yeah.
Are you allowed?
I'm working.
Are you allowed to tell us about it? I wanted to ask: is this a secret still, or?
Yeah, I can't really talk about too much that I'm working on right now, but I'm just, I'm writing some new scripts, developing. So more soon.
And we have a bling. Somebody's
I know.
Texting you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
That's my phone.
I know.
How do I
turn it off? Silent.
How do I do? No, but it is silent.
Oh, okay. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. Karen.
Hopefully nobody gets in touch with me.
Yeah, nobody calls you now.
Hopefully I'm not popular at all.
But you were popular, Karen. And this is so amazing. You were a part of a pop duo in early 2000.
Yeah,
called Daphne and Celeste. And you were a big hit. We're in UK and also Japan. Do I have that correctly?
Well, I mean, we primarily, I've heard that we were successful in Japan, but we mostly were just in like the UK and Scotland. We were very popular in New Zealand as well.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that funny?
That's amazing. That's really fantastic how countries choose you.
I know, right?
That happened to me in my life very often.
I'm sure. Yeah, like different places, more people read your books, right?
Yeah. And so what happened? That lasted for how long? You being a pop star?
It lasted for a couple. I was over there I was living in London for a couple of years. And then did I tell you that we came out with a new album like a year and a half ago?
I know that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we recorded a new album with this really cool producer named Max Tundra. It's a very, it's just like this. I mean, it's a crazy pop album, really fun and eclectic. I'm going to send you a copy, Anna. So
awesome.
We did.
What is it called?
It's called Daphne and Celeste Save the World.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a comeback about 18 years after our first single came out. So that was very fun.
It must have been fun. Now that you're older and more experienced and take it from a different angle. Because I can imagine when you're a teenager and this stardom happens to you, it's totally different.
It was very strange. Yeah. I mean, I think that, something I'm really grateful for is that it was happening in another country. So, when I was in the UK, I was Daphne and I was in a pop band. And, then when I was back in New York, I was just, myself and I could, my life kind of just went on as normal, which I think was like a huge gift.
I did it with my first book. I lived in Austria back then, and I decided to publish it first in Croatia.
Yeah, it's a good, and I think also like, at least for you too, it's like you're able to kind of test what that feels like before it's part of your like everyday life,
And it felt fantastic. So then I went and conquered Germany and Austria.
As you do.
But Karen, we also have great news. You're becoming a mama in spring. So this is a very interesting topic for you right now. Facing motherhood.
It really is. Yes, it's a very interesting topic. I'm sure you thought a lot about those kinds of things too when you were, with Kai, how old is Kai now?
Kai's 5.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Crazy, isn't it? But I started thinking about this only after my mom passed away, actually. I really started thinking about what I've learned from her and what she gave me only once I lost her. I love how women react to this question because I think it makes them think about this while they still have their moms. And that's quite valuable.
I know it's a beautiful thing to be able to think about these questions while your mother's here, you know. And your mother was, I'm so grateful that I got to spend some time with her. She was a wonderful, wonderful person and just full of light.
Full of light and life. But Karen, let's talk about your mama. Mama Kathy. Mama Kathy is from the East Coast like you are.
Yeah.
And Mama Kathy is a nurse, and she had you and your two brothers.
Yeah.
And she always worked. She worked in
Yes, she always did. And she worked in my dad's office. My dad's an allergist and does general medicine. So when I was very little, she worked in a hospital. And then when I was more in grade school, she worked at my dad's office.
How did she do that? I think you told me she had family support because work and three kids.
Oh, yeah. You know, and I mean, there were periods of time where she would, where she was at home most of the time. There are other points where she was working at the office more. And my grandparents lived close by. So I was very lucky to get to spend a lot of time with my grandparents when I was little, which is, they were my grandparents, I miss them. I miss my grandparents a lot, and I was very lucky because I got to have them in my life until very recently, I had three living grandparents through most of my 30s. Which is very, unusual for a lot of people. It's unusual and very special. So, I mean, I grew up with a lot of family support. And, something my mom always said, which I think is so true, is that, kids can never have too much love. And so she was never the type of person who was possessive in any way of her children or who we were close to, so we had a lot of, I was really close to my uncle. I was really close to, a lot of my aunts, and I'm very, and I still am. And I think that family bond is definitely something that shaped me as much as my mom, I'd say. And
it's, it's extremely valuable. Now that Nick and I have a child and we are basically alone, I cannot even imagine what a luxury it is to have your grandparents and aunts and uncles around to help and support, and not only practically, but just, as you say, to spread the love and just be there for you and your child. That's a huge luxury, which I think many people who have it are not aware of how amazing it is.
Oh, totally. And I think that even what was interesting for my mom is that she healed her relationship with her mother through having children. So, so she always said, because my grandmother, Doris, she was a wonderful, wonderful grandma to me. And my mom always said, she's a much better grandmother than she was a mother when I was young. But she kind of redeemed herself in my mom's eyes just because of the way she loved us and how supportive she was, throughout our entire lives. So that's kind of interesting too, like seeing the different generations and how different generations are impacted by each other. And, I think my mom's goal was always to do better than her mom. And she was like, and hopefully you'll do better than I did. So she was very aware of her parenting and what she was doing, or she was trying to be. She was trying. My mom always has been a very conscientious person. And so I think for her, she went into therapy when she had me, because she said when she looked at me, she had never felt that kind of love for another being. And she wanted to make sure that she was working through her own things and her own issues when I was still small, which I think is a very cool thing that my mom did. Mm-hmm. But I feel, growing up, she did say things like, she would say that, look, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to have to go to therapy and talk to people about me. But just always know that I did the best I could. And I think that is I can honestly say that is very true. My mom always did the best. She always tried her hardest and continues to try her hardest always, which is something that, my mom's a very, like, she talks a lot. So she's not the kind of person to, like, we commute, like our family, like we all talk about everything except for my dad. But like one of my brothers and my mom and me, we talk so much.
Karen, apropos your dad, so your parents divorced when in quite late in their 60s or so, early 60s.
Yeah,
and,
I believe. Yeah,
and Mama Kathy went through a very rough patch after the divorce, and then she bounced back, and now she's remarried and happier than ever.
Yep,
isn't that amazing?
It is amazing because also you were there. You were living here in Los Angeles when my mom was going through that difficult patch. And, and I think especially it was scary. And I think, especially when you make those big life changes late in life, it's very, she was really scared, and now it's kind of, time is such a weird thing because if I think back and I'm like, oh, that was 4 years ago. 5 years ago, but like 5 years ago, like it doesn't seem that long. And yet so much has happened,
And she's a new person.
She's right. And she's in this really, she's in this really amazing place and she's very, very in love. She's married to a really caring and good man. And her life is totally different than it was 5 years ago.
But Karen, this is one of the most important lessons I've learned from my mom. When my mom was in her, I'd say early 60s, she created a whole new career for herself. She became a video artist and made this film that suddenly got invited to all the international film festivals, and she was pronounced as one of the 10 most important artists in Croatia. She early 60s, and she suddenly, after many years of sitting quietly, suddenly she started anew. And I hear this from Mama Kathy's bouncing back. And isn't it a beautiful lesson that it's never too late?
Oh, it totally is. And I think that you're right. It's like that's such a great lesson, especially because, both you and me have gone through career reinventions already in our lives. And I don't see that stopping. Just, I see that continuing. I see that as part of our evolution and growth. And, it is inspiring to see mothers who have to see that our mothers have actually successfully done that in various different ways.
So Karen, tell me, I'm curious. What do you think? What would you say is the most important thing you learned from Mama Kathy?
Oh my God. There's so many things that I've learned from her.
It's so fun. I wanted to tell you, Karen, when I ask people or ask women about this, some women are like, I have to think about this. And the other women are like, I have not learned anything from my mom. And you were like, you started telling me all these things. I just could not keep up. So share it with us.
So there's some that are just kind of like, we talked about one that's just funny, which is that my mom always said, always wear good underwear, which was one that was like, so she just always said it growing up. And Anna, you said that your mom said something along those lines too.
I know. And I don't know if it was my mom or my grandma, but I always, and they're like, you have to wear good underwear. If something happens to you and you end up in the hospital, you have to.
Yes.
But I always thought that it was a very Eastern European thing. And it was so funny for me when you told me this. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's the same all over the world. We have to have good underwear. But then you and I talked about how important this lesson is actually, because it's not about underwear. It's about taking care of yourself, even in the ways that are not seeable to others. Like,
totally.
Good underwear is not that they'll bring you to the hospital and judge you in your underwear. It's about feeling wonderful, even, and well taken care of. Even with things that don't show on the outside.
Totally. And, it's so funny because we both had gone, growing up, we both thought of it as this kind of dark thing, like in case something bad happened.
Yes.
But you're right. I think there is a far more positive spin on it. I would say, though, that just off what I'm thinking about right now is that my mom always encouraged me to pursue my passions. My mom has always been a huge champion of her children, which is a great thing. Sometimes not, because sometimes you'd believe me when, like, I'm looking back on it and I'm like, like, I'm not sure if I was entirely being objective when I was talking about how, like, mean a teacher was or something. But I think that, like, my mom always encouraged me to pursue things that I was excited about. She always encouraged me to, like, ask questions, and she never said, because I say so. Like, that was not my mom's style. If anything, she sometimes would go over the top in terms of trying to explain why I was being punished, or, why I couldn't do something. But I feel like, looking back, the really nice thing about that is that I was always actually actively thinking about things, as opposed to being told, well, this is the way it's done. My mom is not that person.
But that made you into the intelligent and creative person you are right now. And it's amazing talking to you how many books you read and how curious you still are about things and how much knowledge you have. And I'm sure this reflects in your work as a writer. It had a good effect.
It did. And I think that, the other thing, that my mom was always she was always a fierce advocate, which is something that I've thought about a lot about, like, now that I'm pregnant, I've thought about how, my mom was she's always been such an advocate for her children. And I think that there's something really awesome about that.
In which way?
She's a champion, so so when I was a kid, if I was interested in something, she would figure out if I wanted to take singing lessons. And I said, and I did, and I said, I want to take singing lessons and I want to sing like Mariah Carey. And so my mom, like, found an amazing voice teacher for me and took me to New York City to take lessons. My mom would, like, make, it's not, I think growing up, she would frame things more in terms of sacrifice, whereas I see a lack there. I think that's not the way I think about it now. I think about it more as, like, she was a champion. Mm-hmm. She was, whatever it was that I was interested in, she would find a way to help me realize my goal, which I think is really, a very special thing.
Does that connect? You told me about, when I asked you this, the question the first time,
yeah.
The first thing you told me was, my mom taught me how to fight for myself and other people.
Yes, that's connected. That's very much connected. Mm-hmm. No, but it's very much connected.
But I love I love this lesson about fighting both for yourself but also for other people. And did you only mean her children or other people? My mom's like that across the board. I think both my mom and me share this deep-seated unhappinbut about things being unfair. That sounds familiar, my dear.
Yes. But I think that's something that's always driven my mom. She's not just an advocate and champion for her children. She fights for what she believes in. She fights for people. She fights for, she does it in all areas of her life. And she always has, and I think that growing up, because she taught me how to fight for myself, in the sense that my mom has never she's an optimist. So she's never felt like anything was hopeless, which is it's great to feel that way when you're a kid, and then as an adult too, like, to know that, like, it's worth it.
Do you think you learned that from her? Are you also an optimist?
Yes. I mean, I feel like we're different. I feel like I always used to think of it as, like, my dad's kind of pessimistic. He called himself realistic, but he's kind of pessimistic. And then my mom is very optimistic. And I kind of got a little bit of both of my parents. So I would say that I'm probably a realistic person veering towards optimism. Like, I am an optimistic person, but I think that with my mom, and this kind of goes into something that I feel like I feel like I've had to learn for myself. My mom doesn't have, she doesn't protect herself emotionally because she's such an empathetic person, so I think that seeing my mom get hurt a lot when I was a kid, when she was disappointed by people or situations, I think that that's tied into her optimism. She always sees the good in people. So I think that that's something that I kind of, through observing my mom and watching her growing up, I think I learned to be a little bit more self-protective, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. My mom was trying to teach me that. She put it in a different way. Maybe it's a different lesson, but she always told me I should not be too emotional. I'm apparently way too emotional, and she was always warning me that creates too much chaos and loss of energy on wrong things and takes the clarity of view away. But it's interesting. She was very emotional, and it's interesting. She was warning me about this, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to learn it. I'm trying.
Honestly, I think on some level, age changes things, because I do feel like my mom is far more able to do that now than she was when I was like 10 or 11 years old, which is when I think I really felt like I did feel like I didn't feel safe necessarily showing my emotions to everybody, which was different than the way my mom is. But I love how open my mom is. So, and I love how, and I am also a very emotional person. So it's ironic that, that's like one of my big takeaways from like what I feel like my mom wasn't able to necessarily instill in me. Because I don't know if it's necessarily, is it a good thing or is it?
I feel that because I am so emotional, I experience life much, much, much more deeply. And that can hurt a lot sometimes, but is also a source of immense joy and pleasure. And just this big satisfaction with this amazing gift that's life, even when things are bad and hurtful sometimes, Well,
and I think for me, I feel like I've compartmentalized some of that because I think I've always expressed it in my work. No one wants a hard heart. And so I think that it's just, figuring out what that looks like for each person. I think it just changes. It's different for each person, and it's probably actually really hard.
We talked about how our moms got us when they were relatively, for today speaking, young. They were both in their 26, 27, and how looking back when we were, I don't know, 8, 10, they were still very, very young. And
so young.
We talked about how they grew up together with us.
Yeah.
And now we are having our children in our 40s. And we are very different. You're a very different person when you're 45 than who you were when you were 35.
Oh my God. It's a totally different thing. Like I look back and like when I was 12 years old, my mom was 38, and but I do think that my mom grew up with me. Like we did grow up together. It wasn't, she was growing up as much as I was. And I think that sometimes what we talked about a little bit is that boundaries are a little bit more confusing when you're that young. Like what do you talk about with your kids? What don't you talk about with your kids? Like what are, I feel like once you're like in your 40s, as you're saying, you can have a different kind of, you are very much the parent in a different kind of way than when you have a kid and and you're still in your 20s.
Yes, you just have the experience and I think the calmness, you just know things better and differently.
Totally. Well, and I think the other thing too is that and I think that when we're talking about both of our mothers sort of reinventing themselves and finding these new sources of fulfillment in their 60s, I think for my mom, she was a mom. She's been a mom for so much of her life. And so I think that also her identity was my mom's identity. I think probably especially because she had like 3 kids, she identified so much as a mom that I think that, sort of coming back into her own as like being a mom in addition to other things was like a huge transition for her. and positive.
Scary, but positive.
Scary,
like every transition.
Scary, but ultimately positive. And I think we have, I think all of us have a much stronger relationship with her now because of it. But, not to say it's not a lot of hard work. Life is such hard work.
Life is hard work, but it's fun.
It is. It totally is.
Karen, thank you so much.
Of course.
I have one last point on those notes that you don't have in front of you, which I think is very important and beautiful. You told me that you're learning more how to admire things about your mom.
Oh, yeah.
Like appreciate her more. And this is exactly what I experienced. When you're young, it's so easy to be like, and my mom this and my mom that.
Yes.
But that was a very beautiful thought.
I think that it is true. It's like, I think as, when I was younger, I so often thought in terms of what my mom wasn't. When I was a kid, I always thought everybody else's mom was like cooler than my mom. I don't know if you ever had that feeling.
I did not. My mom was a movie star. It doesn't get cooler than that.
Right. Your mom was so cool. Your mom was the coolest person.
I was envious of the sandwiches. Like kids would bring sandwiches to school and their moms were making them. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
My mom never made a sandwich for me.
No, well, so actually there was this one time, my best friend growing up, we had hot dog day on Wednesdays, and her mom would give her a pickle to also eat with her hot dog. So I asked my mom one day, I was like, hey, can you also give me a pickle? And my mom was like, you know what? Why don't you just see if Megan's mom can also give you a pickle? And so I did. And Megan's mom gave me a pickle for the rest of the school year.
I love this.
Which is so hilarious now. But I wasn't upset with my mom. My mom hated that kind of thing. Like lunches, even though my mom wasn't a movie star, it didn't bother her. She would just give me whatever we had, kind of gross lunches, I thought. She'd put peanut butter and jelly on saltine crackers. I will not do that for my child. But she always wrote me a note, which was really sweet. Oh. She always wrote me a note, that I was you're going to have the best day. I love you so much. They were so cute. And I still, I love them. When I was younger, I thought other moms were cooler. I definitely often saw what not the best about my mom. But as I've gotten older, I've just recognized how many gifts my mom has given me. And how I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be I think especially when you start doing work on yourself, you realize my mom gave me such a great foundation. She gave me, and one of the things that she gave me that I think is just amazing is she gave me the confidence to fail.
Here we go. At the end of our conversation, now you give me a very big lesson.
Yeah. She gave me the confidence to fail because I knew that I had so much unconditional love and support in my family, and especially for my mom. And I was always told that I could do anything. And I wasn't, but my mom is kind of she's an interesting combination of being very emotional and also very practical. And so my mom, if something didn't work out, my mom would never accept that I not just get back up and keep going, and that it didn't matter, that ultimately it's that meant that I was just getting closer to whatever my goal was.
Yeah. Ultimately the failures don't matter.
Right. And so I think that's such a cool thing to give to your kid. And I do think that as you get older, you realize that being a parent is hard, so I feel when I was younger, in my 20s, I don't think I realized how hard it was to be a parent. I was just kind of I don't think I really spent a lot of time thinking about how challenging it might be to be a parent. But especially as I started getting into my 30s and, thinking about becoming a parent myself, you're oh, wow. It's probably it definitely truly is the hardest thing you'll ever
Karen,
do.
Wait, it's coming. Yeah. You're going to see how hard it is and how amazing.
Well, you're in the thick of it right now. You've got a kid who probably has he's his own person.
Fantastic. It's the best thing in the world, really. Karen, thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you to Mama Kathy. Tell her thank you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. And I'm so excited to
hear yourself.
So excited to, no, not to hear myself, to hear other people. I know myself well.
If you have a mama you'd like to share, you could get in touch with me at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider. That's ANATAJDER. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.